right, so good afternoon, everybody. Alright, so good afternoon. Hello, Arcos. My name is Jorge Jimenez, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about three things. Today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about our company. I actually work for Ethos Global, which is down on River Street. The second thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is some of the projects we have going on, and the third thing is some of the opportunities that are out there for you guys as far as getting what you do here, commercializing it, and taking it to the next level. So we're going to do some introductions. My name is, like I said, Jorge Jimenez. I have a bachelor's in mathematics from Boston University. I'm currently a second-year MBA student here at Lally. I'm getting a management degree. I'm getting an MBA. And I've been with the company Ethos for about a year now. It's getting pretty close. I started off as an intern, worked my way up to a longer internship, and I'm now currently the director of development, which of course involves all our software projects. Today I'm here to introduce our company to your group. I've actually been sitting in the front here for the past couple of weeks, sort of watching some of your projects, trying to get a sense for what's going on, what kind of things are going on, what the skill levels are. And I'm also here to share some of our ideas and kind of put them out there the way we think of them and maybe get some feedback. But primarily I'm here to recruit talented people, and yes, these are paid positions. It's not necessarily just volunteers. So we've been around since 2008. We're an incubator company. Does anyone here know what an incubator company is? Yeah. So does anyone want to tell what it is? No? Okay. Well, basically what it is, it's once companies have a proof of concept that they can make money and take things to a point where you can actually really employ people, RPI provides an incubator environment where you can actually take some of the resources RPI has, internet, talent, and access to a whole bunch of other networks. And we've been operating for about 4 years now, and primarily we focus on three areas. We focus on regulatory content, focus on delivery mechanisms for the content, because I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, and a newer branch is advising and consulting. But mainly what I'm here to talk to you guys about is the delivery mechanisms. So right now we collect, interpret, and maintain information. Now, what kind of information do we maintain? Primarily regulations. So if you make a product here in the United States, it doesn't necessarily, and you sell it within the United States, that doesn't necessarily mean you can go out and sell it everywhere. In fact, some people have problems with supplements because you can buy them here, and they're not regulated here. You try to go to the European Union, like Italy, and they'll get confiscated, or you simply won't be able to sell them. So ultimately what we do is we level the playing fields for companies that are trying to grow internationally and take their stuff outside of the United States, and we provide them, like I said, with software tools that allow them to quickly get a sense for what's allowed and what's not. And that's just one part that we do. That's primarily what I focus on. But it really all comes down to what we call a regulatory compliance guide. And what it is a collection of regulations, documents, guidelines that we ultimately put out there through a variety of web applications. So why did Ethos decide to reach out to you guys? Well, we need to implement our ideas quickly. We're not necessarily in the time scale where we want to take a year, 2 years, 3 years to come up with a project. We want to get things done in 1-2 months the most. We want to iterate. We don't necessarily want to do things all at once. We want to put things out there, have them tested, have them used, and then come back and regroup. We want to leverage open source, mainly because of the costs. We're a small company. Even though we're in operations, we don't have all the resources that big companies have to necessarily license other technologies. So open source is definitely something that we haven't used that much, but we definitely want to get more into. And short-term engagement, but the reason I told you guys about my experience is because I'm probably going to be with the company for another year at least, if not longer. So there's definitely that potential. So you guys are here at Arcos because you want to express yourself creatively, intellectually, but what we kind of want to help you out is give you that entrepreneurial outlet. So when you're making something for us and when you work with our team, we're not necessarily just going to put this thing somewhere else, commit it to SVN or GitHub, and then just forget about it. We're actually going to sell this, and people are going to use this. You're going to get feedback, and what you do is actually going to have an impact on business operations for some of the companies that we work with. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our projects. We actually obviously have more, but these are the ones that we sort of figured you guys might be interested in and might be more suited for. And primarily I'm going to focus on the first one, which is supplier scorecarding. What is supplier scorecarding? Well, food distributors, for example, not McDonald's, that's a retailer. Food distributors are the people who supply to people like McDonald's, Burger King, etc. They have hundreds of suppliers, and they can't necessarily keep track of them. They can't tell which ones are good, and when they get a certain ingredient, they might be getting it from several different suppliers, and there might be a loss of quality. And a very specific aspect of this is called a certificate of analysis, and what these are, I'm going to show you in a second, are basically whenever you get a package, whenever these suppliers to McDonald's get another, there's a supply chain, right? So you have a supplier to McDonald's, that person gets supplied certain ingredients. And what comes with those ingredients is usually a form. It's called a certificate of analysis. And what it is, it's basically something like this, right? You have a bill of materials, and you have a range between which you want to have certain values. So for example, you have sodium, right? You see that the specifications here says you have to have it between 6.5 and 9.5% of your product. And next to that, you're going to have value of what it actually is value. So these are some things that somebody agrees on ahead of time, and then you actually have to list the value. And what we are actually really interested in implementing is a web interface for basically tracking those. So let's say this is 1 month, and it's 8.6. Okay, cool. Next month, 9.3, 9.47. It's approaching the limit. And like I said, when you have hundreds of suppliers and multiple items that you're getting, you can't necessarily keep track of this stuff by looking at a piece of paper. You want to graph it out. So what we're looking for, and this is just look and feel, we're looking for things that actually, just to put it plainly, that look cool. That's a Dojo graph, and that's HTML5, CSS, nicely done things. We don't want just applications that do the thing. We actually want it to look nice. It's easier to market that way. So, I actually looked at the Archos projects page, and it looks exactly what we want. Very sleek, very modern. But as far as the actual functionality itself, we have 5 cases. We have one for the developer, right? And that's where you guys might come in more in handy. The second is service. We do need people to service these apps, and not necessarily just update the software, but actually use them. And third, and this is something that you guys might not necessarily be involved with, is the reporting. So developers, what we need, plain and simple, is we need to develop a web form generator. We need something that quickly allows people to generate 10, 20, 30 forms without too much overhead and without necessarily copying and pasting code all over the place. We want something that basically lets someone with a medium amount of technical knowledge to create these forms. Now, ideally, we'd like to have a user interface that allows people to do it, drag and drop, but initially, we just need something that's a high-level code. And I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually something I noticed WordPress does. You kind of have this pseudocode, and you have a script that actually turns that into HTML. We want something like that initially. Eventually, we'd like to have a GUI, drag and drop, all the nice HTML5 functions that everyone loves, but right now we're trying to be pragmatic and get this done. Now, the second thing is data entry, and this is related to people that obviously can use the software, but also this would be more of a longer-term engagement. You'd be a service personnel, you'd be entering information and generating graphs. I'm going to skip over the reporting. So why is this important, first of all? Well, like I said, sometimes when you get something like sugar, right, suppliers have a really high risk. They can't just get it from one person, they have to get it from several. And what we're looking for is something that very easily gives people an overview. So here, those values that we saw earlier, if you were just looking at forms, you wouldn't necessarily get an idea for which one are good. But if these were 6 different suppliers, and these people had a visual representation for what it looks like, obviously the winner would be the guy on the top, right? Because they're not all over the place, they're not necessarily approaching any of the bounds, and that's really what sells. So specifically as far as what we're looking for people that are familiar with Dojo. JavaScript technologies are fine, but primarily Dojo, that's what we've been building on. It lowers our overhead. We already have a lot of things going in that direction, so we don't want to necessarily introduce anything else. Obviously, you need to have some knowledge of backend, server, MySQL. We really are agnostic in that sense, but you must be able to set it up, deploy it, and either maintain it yourself or write documentation so that somebody else can do it. As far as the service personnel, you'd basically be using the application, and eventually it's not anybody else. Anybody will be able to take on basic knowledge, but initially, depending on how we come up with that generator, you might need someone who knows a little bit about more code. So the second project is a connector, and what we'd actually developed right now is we have a process for uploading documents and generating metadata. People upload documents, key it in. What we do is we index it and make it easily available. It's not necessarily that we're creating these documents, we're just making them, we're putting them in a centralized location and allowing people to search for them and make use of them in a quick manner. And the third project would actually be mostly a new project. Maybe a business concept, but switching costs are really important. We're trying to get one of our potential customers to switch off an older system and get into our system. And the problem with that is they're like, well, how are we going to get all this information out? We have years of using the software. Do you have anything that will put what we have into your format? And we said no, but we'd like to definitely have something like that. And of course, I'm just giving you a really high-level overview of this, but essentially, we would like you to take what we already built. We have another connector. I'd like you to sort of take that and use it. And obviously, everything's working towards a GUI that somebody can use. Project number 4, this is a project that's still in the works. What it is basically almost like a social, like an intranet, a social network for suppliers where they can communicate, and you can ask for specific documentation. What we need is basically just dashboards and something that allows people to upload and download documents, and like I said, answer surveys, collaborate on surveys, and again, visual. We need something that says this supplier has submitted all their safety documentation, this one hasn't, and that's really important. And the 5th one. This one is something that I'm not necessarily going to go too much into, but what we have right now is a problem that startups usually have, and if anybody of you guys here have a startup, you usually start doing something, you get it to the point where it's working, and then you can't scale it. That's a big problem, because you made it just for one thing, you didn't really think about all the options, and right now we have one client that's using the software, and we're trying to sell it to other clients. The only problem is we don't have a way to easily clone projects. We have one project and it's customized for them. If you wanted to try to add somebody new, if somebody said tomorrow, hey, we want that, it would take us probably a couple months. And 5 people say it would take us 10 months, 6 people a year. And what we need is someone that can come in and basically start making this so that it's deployable. So again, a lot of this probably doesn't make any sense. It's very generic and it's very high level, but I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more about the opportunity itself. We're looking for computer science, computer engineers, IT majors, any grade level, whether you're a freshman or a senior. Seniors are usually looking for jobs at this point, so maybe sophomore, junior would be the right time to go. We're looking for people that are self-starters. We really value people that have started their own companies, self-motivated, and most of all creative. We're not just looking to tell you, okay, you need to get this done, we need to get this working. We actually want your input as well, because it's not just a one-way street. We actually want you to say, oh, that might not work, or anticipate problems that might come up. Ideally, we'd like people with UI design experience, HTML, we do whatever. HTML5, I like to throw that out there, but if you can't make it work on every browser, then it's not necessarily something we want. We just want something people can use, because our clients are chemists, they are physicists, they're not computer science majors, they're not technical people necessarily, so we need something that's very easy to use. So if you have experience developing those kind of applications, that'd be great. As far as programming languages, we're completely agnostic, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Obviously, we'd like to use what we already have, but if you're a Python genius, we don't really have anything in Python, but if you're really proficient at it and it's going to take you twice as long to do it in C#, which is what we normally use, then we don't necessarily want to take you away from that. So as far as the work environment, you guys are students. The way things work now, you can work from anywhere as long as you have a computer. You obviously provide your own software unless you can't afford it. And this is a paid opportunity. You would have to keep track of your own hours, not necessarily just to get paid, but also so that we can say, okay, you're struggling, maybe let's help you out. Come into the office, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Occasionally, that might be required to come into our office. We're just down the street on River Street, right across from Subway-ish, close enough. And you'll be, I guess, participating in web conferences as needed. It's really a very, very flexible environment, and it's really fun. I've been with the company, like I said, for a year. James just joined us last week, and he used to actually be in Archos.
Yeah, James was working on Archos for the last 2 semesters, at least 2 semesters.
Well, I haven't been here for 2 semesters, but the 3 before that, yes.
Yeah. So you did a surface, isn't it?
Yeah, we did a touch surface. Me and my partner did a 5-foot touch surface and presented to Mark Smith. Actually, a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun in Arcos, and I'm glad to be back and see you guys still here.
See you. Good stuff. All right, so with that, I'll leave it up to questions. If you guys have any questions, comments, there's my contact information. I'm sitting right over there. So if you're interested, please come talk to me or James. We can talk a little bit more in detail, and love to hear from you. Thank you very much.